Hello everyone, this is Agony333. And today's movie review is going to be over Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, which is this movie right here. And one that I was really excited for because it was pretty much like a reboot and a new chance for the Resident Evil franchise movie-wise. It is from 2021. It is rated R. It is 1 hour and 47 minutes, and it is action, horror, sci-fi. And what I was saying, like I already said, was my hype was there because it was an entire new chance. Because, you know, the other 6 films that we saw before, I had my own criticisms about for a very long time. I've been watching them since they came out, since I was a kid and everything. But at least for me at the time when they were being released, while I enjoyed them, they were not exactly what I was hoping for when it came to a movie adaptation of Resident Evil. And I think that the main reason for that is because they almost felt nothing like, you know, the Resident Evil games. You know, you had characters like Alice and other ones like that who weren't even a part of the game series. And the story kind of took its own direction. And it was more action-packed and based in that rather than actual survival horror like the games were. But as time went on, I kind of grew to enjoy them for what they were and sort of appreciate that at least they were there and at least they were entertaining. That's as much as I can say about that. But let's get into this film. So yeah, I was hyped to see what new direction that this series would take, because I had heard when it was going to be released that it was going to actually be more so based on the game. And that's one thing that I'll say positive-wise, is I feel like this movie adaptation at least does deliver us a film that is more so truer to how the game was, the game's feel and everything like that, the atmosphere and all that. But let me actually get into like the storyline. So pretty much it's almost like they took Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2, the games, kind of combined them and then made them into this movie, because it has parts and it has, you know, different aspects of both of those games kind of mixed into one film here. So it's kind of like they condensed both of those storylines into one. But it's pretty much about several different characters. One of them being Claire Redfield returning to Raccoon City as the town's falling apart. But, you know, everything's going wrong. Umbrella's pretty much taking over. And if you know the games, you'll know more so about the story. And yeah, pretty much undead terrors decide to descend on the town and awaken in the night and everything like that. But, so I guess it's like a cheap-ass, you know, synopsis or whatever. But yeah, alright. So here's one thing I thought I would pick apart, though. I already kind of mentioned a positive, which is that I feel like compared to the old films, this one actually does a better job living up to what the games were trying to do in terms of that survival horror feel, rather than an action-packed kind of movie. But here's one thing I thought I would pick apart here, and that is specifically a quote on the back. And it says, this is going to be a tricky review for me, by the way, to explain exactly what my thoughts are on. But one of the quotes on the back here says, one of the best films in the entire Resident Evil franchise. And that's something that I have to say, at least in my opinion, is a wrong, false statement. Because sadly, while this film does deliver and live up to how the games are supposed to be atmosphere-wise, setting-wise, and, you know, overall tone and feel, it also fails in many other aspects, which I'll be getting into. So that's a negative, is to me this is not the best in the franchise, and I'll probably go into at least what I feel like are the best adaptions. And it's not the old films either. You know, the old films, I appreciated them for their awesome action sequences, even if they did not deliver on the story end of things because they just did their own thing. While as this movie, it delivers more so on that setting and atmosphere. And, you know, it has some good action there. The place where it fails here that I put is it is incredibly miscast. What the fuck? Because really, out of the entire cast of characters that we see in this film, to me, there's only like one character that actually somewhat resembles their in-game counterpart, which is Chris Redfield. Other than that, almost none of the characters at all feel like their game adaptation. Like if you played the games and you watch this movie, you won't even recognize any of these characters. You sure they'll have the name, they'll have the name there, but they don't at all, personality-wise or even physical appearance-wise, seem to resemble at all their fucking characters in game. I don't know what the hell the problem is, but that's the problem I have with this film. And truthfully, at least for me, it is a huge fucking negative that kind of takes away from how good the film could have been in a way. But let me go into another aspect here. Another thing is the cheesy acting, because some of the acting's all right here, but some of the acting's pretty, poor as well. So, but it's a positive and negative, is what I felt. And the reason it's both of those things is it somewhat works, but it fails at the same time. The reason it somewhat works is if you've played the old games, the old games didn't have the best voice acting, but it had a sort of charm to it, and it kind of went along with the gameplay, and it worked that way. So that's why I'm saying in a way it works, because it lives up to those old games in terms of having that kind of feel. But at the same time, I feel like if they would have at least, instead of miscasting, if they would have actually gotten actors that lived up to the role of these characters, if they would have actually taken the time to have the personalities be like the old characters from the games, that would have helped this film a little bit more. A positive here, which I already kind of mentioned, is Raccoon City itself seems more like the games. Because, like in the old films, there was Resident Evil Apocalypse, and really, at least to me, the town didn't really even at all seem or resemble what I would think Raccoon City should look like or feel like. Whereas this movie gets that a lot better. Another positive here that I put was I felt like the creature effects were really damn good. So that's one thing, the special effects and stuff I feel like were handled pretty well. And here's another thing that is a fucking rarity for me. I've mentioned it in other movie reviews and other things, that most of the time I don't feel like there is excessive cussing in a film, and it doesn't really bother me ever. It's very, very fucking rare, but this is one of those rare circumstances here. Because there's a certain characters in this film that just say fuck excessively just for the sake of it. And I don't know the exact fucking reason why that is. But the other thing is, if you go back to those games, there's hardly any cussing really in them. There's some cussing there, but it's not done to the degree that this film does. So, whereas in almost like 9 out of 10 times in any film, look at Rob Zombie's films. Those films are rife with fucking curse words. But it never ruins the film, at least for me. But in this case, it felt fake, it felt forced. It was just, it just didn't work at all. And like I said, none of the characters seemed to resemble their in-game character counterparts. And here's another thing I thought I'd put, is that about an hour in, I feel like the movie does improve. For a while, it kind of drags a little bit. And I think, like I keep on saying, the main fucking reason for that is because of the miscasting of these characters. If they would have just kept these characters true to those game characters, I feel like it would have excelled way more. Let me see here. But another positive is I feel like it did do a decent job of combining both Resident Evil 1 and 2. And here's another, not really a trivia thing, but I did like how there were multiple references to several of the games in this movie. There's different things like a typewriter you can kind of see in a background in one scene. Other things like that, like Lisa Trevor from Resident Evil 1. There's just all kinds of different nods to the franchise, which I really like when there is attention to detail like that. But yeah, I guess I will have to go ahead and give it its rating and then go over just maybe a couple minor, not really minor spoilers, but just a couple thoughts on things. But it was kind of tough for me to come up with a rating to this film, because on one hand, I did like this film for what it got right, but on the other hand, I hated, the aspects of which it fell short. And it kind of made me kind of come to a conclusion, in a way, that maybe we will never really see a perfect live adaptation of Resident Evil. Maybe it's just not possible, or maybe it'll take a very long time to get there, because, you know, the 6 original films, they focused too much on the action and they didn't really seem to care when it came to living up to the story, but they were cool for the action, and after a while, you know, I grew used to them. Whereas this film, it kind of lives up to the setting, the atmosphere, the story, but it's incredibly miscast, and, you know, the actors, at least to me, didn't do the best job portraying their characters. So that's where it falls short here. But this was the last bit I guess I should get into that I mentioned earlier when it came to the best kind of adaptions. And that is, I feel like the best adaptions that we really have are the animated films, like Resident Evil Degeneration, Resident Evil Vendetta, you know, the various animated movie adaptions. I feel like those are probably the best in terms of what we have when it comes to the Resident Evil series. And I think the reason for that is because not only do they live up to the storyline, not only do they live up to the characters, but they do also have the action. They really have the best of all of it. So at least to me, it's like if you're looking for Resident Evil films that really do live up to this universe, this story, this series, your best bet is to go with the Resident Evil animated films, the CGI films. But I felt like the rating that I would give this film is like a 6.5, and I'll be honest, it's a little bit generous just because I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil. I think that, you know, some fans will be disappointed in this film just because it, like I said, it overall lacks in some ways, but it delivers in other ways. So my thought is if you really want something that lives up true to this series, check out the animated films. Those ones won't disappoint because they, you know, handle everything much fucking better. But I hope you guys have a great, amazing, wonderful day. For those of you who want to maybe stick around for just a couple quick, you know, thoughts on things, stick around. But for everybody else, peace. All right. So what are a couple fucking spoilers here that I'm going to talk about? Well, I really liked the, you know, the design of the Spencer Mansion, as well as the orphanage. And I feel like I said here, an hour later into the film, it sort of improves. And I think that's when the action sort of picks up, things like that. And I feel like that first hour would have been much better if they would have just gotten the right casting. I mean, Leon S. Kennedy wakes up fucking drunk and everything. The character doesn't even look like his original character, doesn't even act like his original character. Like, none of that stuff really seems to live up in any way, and it was kind of just terrible to watch. And yeah, I don't know, the acting just wasn't the best. It kind of fell flat. And see, in a lot of movies where a slow burn might work, or story building might work, because it's taken its time to tell the story, this one, it doesn't do that because of the miscasting, because of none of the characters resembling their in-game counterpart, like I keep saying. But I thought that the setting was very fucking well done, and it trying to live up to the series in terms of setting and tone was very well done. So at least the movie makers succeeded in that regard. Another thing I thought I'd put here is that I really liked the design of the liquor later on when it's, you know, crawling on the ceiling and everything and drops down in the orphanage. I thought that scene was really awesome. But what I didn't really like was how they had Lisa Trevor fight the liquor, because if you've played the games, in a way, this kind of followed in the footsteps of the second Silent Hill movie, which, to be honest, I didn't really care for, which was Silent Hill Revelations. Whereas the first Silent Hill movie was a fucking great one. You know, it really lived up to the games and everything, and it got a lot right. The second Silent Hill focused more on action-packed stuff, and we also saw, you know, a monster which should be like a villain and an evil monster helping a character. And that's the same case in here. If you've actually played the games, Lisa Trevor, you know, is a person that was experimented on and pretty much turned into a monster, and is an antagonist, a bad, you know, a monster that the characters are having to deal with. For whatever reason in this film, she ends up being a character that sort of helps, which, I mean, in some aspects I was okay with it, helping-wise, but I mean, to me, it was just later on when she's fighting the liquor and stuff for them, it just didn't live up to the character as well. So that's what I'm saying is, I feel like a huge negative of this film was none of these characters at all resembling personality-wise, physical appearance-wise, in any way, the characters that they're trying to represent. But another positive, I guess I'll say, is now I like Journey due to this fucking film. That whole sequence was kind of amusing to me. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. This film has some of the charm that the old games have, and somewhat the acting works. But I feel like overall the film would have gotten a higher rating and been more enjoyable if they would have tried to hire people, that resemble these characters better. And to me, there's not much of an excuse for that, because there's plenty of people in like cosplay community, in these gaming events. There's lots of fans of this series that do actually go out of their way to try to look like these characters and act like these characters. So to me, it's like you could probably cast someone who would do a much better job acting and filling these roles better than the people that they hired for the film. But that's about, I think, all that I've got to fucking say about this movie. I think some fans will enjoy it, and I think others will not so much enjoy it and kind of feel disappointed like I did. But I guess at least one positive is there's more Resident Evil for us all to enjoy. But alright, guys, I hope that you have an amazingly bad fucking ass day. And this is Agony333 signing the fuck out. Peace. Have an awesome one.